Good day, Humanistas. How are you? I hope you are fine. Okay, so I'm here again to discuss about the inherent powers of the state. And so, what do we mean when we talk about the inherent powers of the state? And what are the inherent powers of the state? Now, being a state, it naturally and automatically grants certain inherent powers. Okay, and these inherent powers come from state sovereignty. And they are considered to be outright, absolute, and complete. And they are also the powers that are necessary for the branches of government to get their jobs done. Okay? But why it is said that these powers are inherent? It is said that these powers are inherent because they did not be expressly conferred by a constitutional provision. Okay? As they are supposed to coexist with the state. This means then that these inherent powers are those powers over and beyond those explicitly spelled out in the Constitution, or which can be reasonably be implied. Meaning to say, in Tagalog, ito yung mga kapangyarihan ng Estado na likas. Okay? Likas na mga kapangyarihan ng Estado. As the state exists, and so are the inherent powers. Okay? So what are the inherent powers of the state? We have the police power, the power of eminent domain, and the power of taxation. Now, since these powers are considered to be absolute, outright, and complete, the question then is, are the inherent powers of the state subject to such limitations? What do you think? Yes. Okay. There are limitations in the exercise of these inherent powers of the state. Okay? And these powers may not be exercised to trample or step upon the rights guaranteed under the Bill of Rights. So these fundamental powers are subject at all times to the limitations and requirements of the Constitution. Meaning to say that when these powers are being exercised to step upon, okay, or to trample upon the rights of every individual in the society, then it cannot be exercised. Okay? So there are such limitations in the exercise of these inherent powers of the state. Okay, so let us talk about the power of eminent domain. Okay? Refers to the ability of the state to acquire private property that will be used for public purposes through just compensation. What does that mean? It means that when a property is owned by a private person or a corporation, but the state is interested in it, the state can acquire it by paying the right amount of money based upon the fair market value. That is why the power of eminent domain is also known as the power of expropriation of the state. Now, if the state really needs the property for public use, can it force the owner to sell his property even if he does not want to sell it? No. Okay? If the owner did not agree and there is no agreement, the property will remain in the ownership of the private owner. Hence, it will remain private property. Okay? But if the owner agrees, then the property will be acquired by the state and become a public property. But if there is no agreement, okay, the state cannot force its sales because it will violate the right to private property. This means that even if this inherent power is powerful or absolute, outright, and complete, it still has limitations. Okay? As you can see in the picture, I think this is in China, and the owner did not agree to sell his private property. Anong ginawa ng gobyerno? Dahil hindi binenta ng may-ari yung bahay na yan, okay, pinaiputan nila. At naging daan yung bawat side, okay, ng bahay na to. So, ibig sabihin that the state cannot really force its sale. But if the state really wanted to acquire that private property and use it for public purposes, they can bring the matter to the court. Okay? And whatever the court decides or decision, that will be followed, either by the government or by the owner who owns the private property. Yan. Now, who may exercise the power of eminent domain? The power of eminent domain is primarily lodged in the lawmaking body. Okay? So, it originates from the lawmaking body. In the Philippines, the lawmaking body that we have is our legislature. Okay? And the legislature refers to the Congress, kung saan nahati ito sa dalawa. Because we have a bicameral system of legislature. We have the upper house and the lower house. Okay? Don't worry, we will have a discussion on that as we go on with our lesson. But, aside from the Congress, the power of eminent domain may validly delegated to other government entities. Because under the law, the following may also exercise the power of eminent domain. We have the president, okay, the local legislative bodies, certain public corporations, and quasi-public corporations. Okay? And this power of eminent domain can also be exercised by private corporations, or what we call quasi-public corporations, serving essential public needs or operating public utilities. Like for example, in Cagayan, we have our Kajelco. They are quasi-public corporations, okay, that serve essential public needs or operating public utilities. Now, there are requisites in taking a private property by the government. Okay, first, we have necessity, which means there is really a need to acquire a private property for public use, given that it is being taken with just compensation. The second one is the property to be taken must be private, subject to expropriation. Okay? So, the government, when taking a property for public use, it must really taken from a private owner. Because the government cannot buy its own property. Okay? Parang uto-uto ang gobyerno natin pag ganyan. Or, inuuto nila ang taong bayan. Okay? And, we also have here the requisite of just compensation. Just compensation means there is full and fair equivalent property taken from the private owner. Okay? And it refers to the remuneration given to the owner in exchange of his property. Yan. So those are the requisites of taking the property used by the government for public purposes. Another inherent power of the state is the police power. And when we say police power, it does not necessarily mean that we are referring to the police force or the PNP, for example, in our country. Mali yung connotation natin na ganon. Okay? Or yung conception natin that when we talk about the police power, it primarily talks about the police force. No. Okay? Although may connection ito sa police force natin. Because the police power as an inherent power of the state is based on the Latin maxim, salus populi suprema lex esto, which means that the welfare of the people is the first law. Okay, so the police power relates to the welfare or the good of the people as the supreme or the first law. It is the power then that is being vested in our legislative branch of government to pass reasonable laws. Okay? And these reasonable laws must promote public health, peace and order, advancement in education, okay, development of our resources that will really put the people to prosperity. Okay? And to realize this maxim, the state must have to use its police force to enforce, for example, peace and order in the society. Because police power as inherent powers of the state basically aims to promote the common good. Lastly, but of equal importance as inherent power of the state is the power of taxation. It refers to the ability of the state to levy required contributions from its constituents. And the power of taxation or taxation is considered to be the lifeblood of the state. Okay? Why? Because taxation are the charges imposed by our legislative body upon person or property to raise money for public purposes. Yan. Now, the right of taxation is inherent to the state because the state is established for the advancement of the people. And hence, it must have the means, diba, with which to carry out its works. The state then was established because only through its existence can human beings attain their greatest well-being. And for that reason, the people must give up part of their income to the state. Because the state cannot really raise money for public purposes, okay, to carry out the welfare of the people without generating income. Okay? So there is really a need for the people to give up some of their income to the state. And that income will be used by the state for public purposes. Okay? So tax then must be for public purpose. And the rules of taxation, by the way, is that it must also be uniform in all parts of our country. Okay? It must also be fair because according to the Supreme Court, the power of taxation is a symbiotic relationship. Okay? A symbiotic relationship whereby in exchange for the protection that the citizens get from the government, taxes are therefore paid. Okay? And these taxes are collected to deliver social services to the people. Let us discuss the purpose and importance of taxation. The purpose of taxation is undoubtedly to raise revenues of funds. Okay? And why is there a need to raise revenues? To support the government. And not only to support the government, but also the delivery of its services to the people. How about the importance of taxation? The importance of taxation, as you can see in my slide, derives from the unavoidable obligation of the government. Okay? And that unavoidable obligation of the government is to protect the people. Not only to protect the people, but also to extend them the benefits in the form of public projects and services. And actually, we are enjoying these benefits every day, okay, in the form of public projects and services delivered by the government to us. And, but let us also remember that there are also constitutional limitations of the power of taxation. Same with all the inherent powers of the state. They cannot be used to step upon or to trample the right of people, okay, in the society. When these powers, although considered to be inherent, absolute, complete, they cannot be used to abuse the people. Because as we discussed a while back, that these inherent powers of the state came from its own sovereignty. And the sovereignty resides from the people. So this cannot be used. The inherent powers of the state cannot be used to trample upon or step upon the right of people. Okay? So that is the limitation in the exercise of these inherent powers of the state. What do you know about the theories of state formation? Or do you have any idea of these theories in the formation of the state? Actually, there are several theories of state formation. And one of them is the divine right theory. And this theory can explain the situation during the medieval era in Europe. Because most of the monarchies that we know came from the medieval Europe. Okay? And the divine right theory assumed that the state is created by God. Thus, the leader is also chosen by God. And because of this conception, monarchs justify their leadership by the rights given to them by God, and that their power is absolute, and that disobeying them would mean disobeying the will of God, and the punishment is hell. So that was the conception. But today, this justification can no longer be used, especially to a democratic country like ours. Another theory in the formation of state is the force theory. And it was first advocated by Heraclitus, as he said that the world is in constant change. And he also argued that no one can step on the same river twice. And he will say that the world changes from time to time. And the world will always have conflicts and wars. And because of these conflicts, states are created. So, for the advocates of this theory, they believe that the state is created by force, by wars and conflict. For example, the Philippine state was created after the revolution of 1986. So this theory then maintains that the state is founded because the weak seeks protection and the strong ones protect and rule them in return. The instinctive theory. This theory can be traced from the works of Aristotle, as he said that man is working for his telos. Okay? And that states are created because of human instinct and rationality. And how can we relate this to the telos of man? The state is very important in order for men to achieve their telos. Okay? Because as men associate themselves to other men, they become big enough. And it will reach to the point of becoming a state. The state then, according to Aristotle, is the most complex of all social organizations. And it will help, or it will be the one that can help man to achieve its telos. Another theory is the patriarchal theory. And this is the simple theory in the formation of state because it believes that the state is a mere expansion of family. Okay? Like for example, when we are going to trace the the root of Abraham. Sabi nga natin, Father Abraham has many children. Many children as Father Abraham. I am one of them, and so are you. Kidding aside, patriarchal theory means family grew into clan, and then clan into tribe, tribe into nation, and then nation into state. So parang sinasabi dito that the state was really created because there was a grouping of people from the very basic unit of the society, from the family. It goes into clan, and then into tribe, and to such a point that it will become a state. And we also have the social contract theory. You pay attention to this because this theory is considered to be the most acceptable theory in the formation of states. In this theory, it believes that the state was founded by man's covenant or contract, meaning to say that states are created or formed through agreements among human beings. The general idea in this theory is that there was a time wherein there is no government. So the state of nature is that there is no government. And in the state of nature, the rights of man are absolute. Thus, they can do anything they want without any authority regulating or limiting them. And because of that, disorder and violence are rampant in that state of nature. And because of that, people come together to create a social contract wherein they will give up some of their rights to the state, and in return, security and protection are given to them. Thus, this is how the state is created through an agreement among the people. There are three variations of this theory, okay? And three political philosophy thinkers discuss this theory but with differences. Let us talk first about Thomas Hobbes and the Leviathan. Thomas Hobbes started with the idea of a very violent state of nature, and that he also argued that the life of man is short, brutish, and nasty. And because of too much chaos then, people who are rational to think will come up with a compromise, okay, and have an agreement. And that agreement is to create the Leviathan. But what is the Leviathan, by the way? To Thomas Hobbes, the Leviathan refers to someone who has the supreme power over everyone. And in here, Thomas Hobbes is referring to the monarch. And he argued that it does not matter what the monarch does, even if it is good or evil. The people cannot overthrow him because they are the ones who created the Leviathan. Okay? And rebelling against the Leviathan would mean rebelling against themselves. So the purpose here of the creation of the state or the Leviathan in the view of Thomas Hobbes is for the maintenance of peace and order. And if the monarch decides to, to maintain peace and order in a brutal way, it does not matter, according to Thomas Hobbes, as long as the purpose is being served to the people, then the Leviathan cannot be overthrown by the people. Because as I said, okay, in the words of Thomas Hobbes, rebelling against the Leviathan would mean rebelling against themselves who created the Leviathan. Political thinker who contributed in the theory of state formation, particularly the social contract theory, is John Locke, and his works, the two treatises on government. Unlike Thomas Hobbes, John Locke viewed the state not as a chaotic state, but as a moderate nature. And he argued that the state of nature, although a moderate one, may have the potential to become chaotic rather than the real chaos. Okay? And in that situation, according to John Locke, men then, through their rationality, would make a social contract. So, with the creation of a social contract, John Locke stated that the state existed And the state existed to protect the natural rights of the people and the right also of the people to rebel against unjust laws. So in here, unlike Thomas Hobbes, who argued that the Leviathan, whatever he does, cannot be overthrown, for John Locke, the people can rebel against a government that is not doing its duty and abuses its power. Because in the first place, the people created that government and it is part of their right to rebel against unjust laws. Here, the theory of Jean-Jacques Rousseau and his work, The Social Contract. The theory of Rousseau is somewhat different from the works of the first two because he argues that the introduction of a society or the creation of the state through a social contract is the reason why people become evil and insecure. And for him, the construction of a social contract is not exactly good. And he even said that man is born free and yet everywhere he is chained because of the presence of a social contract. But since the contract is already there, the purpose then of the state is to protect the common good. If the state, according to Rousseau, through the government, will not do its responsibilities, the people may overthrow the government. And this cycle will go on and go on. And overthrowing the government can only be avoided until such time that there will be a government that will really adhere to the protection of the common good. Until that there will be a government that will really look into the welfare of the people as the primary responsibility or the primary law of the government to really secure a society wherein the people are living in a harmonious way. So, nakikita natin dito na sinasabi din ni Rousseau that the people may undergo revolt or rebellion when the government will really not look into the common good of all. Okay? So, those are the theories in the formation of the state. But whatever theory you believe in, or whatever theory may look acceptable and valid to you, you must always have to bear in mind that the state is created for the welfare and protection of the people. And with this, I would like to say thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again next time with another discussion. Let us all be political. Okay? Goodbye and God bless. Thank you.